Right, this is the Boyuu A9. Um, a few a little while ago, I showed you the kit as it arrived and what I had to do, and I did say that I was going to start by putting the input and output controls and binding posts and all these things on the mains. And I went further and I also assembled the internal wiring, everything except for the I assembled everything. So this is what it looks like inside. I had to attach a wire from the input sockets for the screen and attach it to this input switching board where I attach my cables for the inputs. And as you can see, it runs up there to the top to the volume control, in on one side, out on the other side, where it's ready to hit the grids of the first input stage on the amplifier. So as you can see, everything's ready just to plumb onto the board. I'm going to twist these cables, of course. These are my the primaries of the output transformer here. Primaries for both output transformers. I put a nice little shroud over the input socket so you're not easy to shock yourself. I also put a bit of heat shrink on these cables here. That probably could do with a bit more heat on it, but it's going to be difficult to sort of touch anything live there. But having said that, you'll still be able to touch the input board, sorry, the circuit board, which does contain lots of live voltages. So there you go. That's what it looks like as I've done it to my sort of, I've tried to do a good job of keeping it all neat and tidy, and you'll see it when the finished article. It's going to look very clean. So saying that, I also assembled the circuit board, and here this is. Here it is, family. That's the board. Now, I'm going to put this in public so those people that have got this kit can have a little bit of a guidance of what I've done. Excuse the reflection of the light of my phone. It's unavoidable. Sorry, I could do a better thing, but a better video possibly. But I'm not the most not that bothered about Hollywood type production. So anyway, here we go. That's the circuit board. Now you'll notice anybody who's got the amplifier, they'll notice there's a couple of differences. I wouldn't necessarily call them modifications, but just what I did basically was I substituted some of the components for, like, I substituted axials for radials. Or is that radials for axials? Anyway, you know what I mean. This isn't the original. The original orange drop capacitors, I changed and put these, they're either polypropylene 0.47 600 volt capacitors on either side. You can see I tried to keep it like symmetrical. And I also got this nice chunky low profile main capacitor. It's actually 330 microfarads, and once it's gone through this resistor, there'll be a certain amount of sort of delay on starting up, which will be quite nice actually. So it'll be quite a soft start for the valves, I would think. I've also added this 0.1 microfarad 600 volt, which is basically straddling this, just to sort of help the impedance, the reactance at high frequencies, so it still performs as a capacitor. It's only 0.1 of a microfarad, but it should be enough. So there you go. 500 volt, these are 500 volt capacitors. This is a 450 volt. You'll notice in the original circuit, this is 400, these are 450. I've done it that way because I do want to try a different rectifier in this amplifier at some point, probably a GZ34, which will bump the HT rail up a little bit, and let's see what that does for the output valves. I haven't done any measuring yet, but obviously I'm not going to do that yet. The next thing I'm going to do, fit this board, attach all the wiring, the heaters and the HT, the output transformers, etc. And then when I've done that, before I plug any valves into it, I am going to apply the power, and measure the volts of the transformer, just to make sure. I know that most of these amplifiers come in 220 volt, but mine's specified to be 230 volts. Now the mains here is 240, well officially 230, but actually probably around 240. Probably would have been nicer if I could have got a 240 volt transformer, but never mind. So I expect the voltages to be a little bit higher than they normal, but hopefully it won't be too bad. I'm really worried about the HT at the most. That's the most concerning thing. The the heater voltages, because you don't really want to go higher than the recommended heater voltage requirement on the valves, because otherwise that leads to burnout of the filaments and goodbye valves. So here we go. That's it. Boyuu A9 ready to go together. This is it. I actually quite like this little kit. I mean, I haven't heard it, but considering I followed a lot of people, thanks to the guys at DIY Audio Forum for carrying a lot of pages on this amplifier, and this is my video to say thanks and give back to everybody, so you can see, you know, what can be done, or what I did anyway. I'll try to do it in a way, so as you can see, this is completely removable from the main chassis, and so I've tried to do it in a way that keeps it all sort of easy to follow, if you get what I mean. I hope you do. I've got twisted cabling, the wiring for the choke, and it's ready to go onto this board. And the other thing I did was I attached PCB pins in many places, so that I could just, rather than poke the resistor leads, the component leads straight through the board, I've just got them so that I could tack them onto these pins, and if I need to, when I want to do any modifications, I can just desolder it and lift the pins away, and it's quite easy to then make any adjustments I want to make. If I want to change the resistor, or if I want to change this capacitor, I've got a 390 microfarad at 450 volts that I might want to put in there. And I've also got a pair of, these are 33 microfarads, but I've got some 47 microfarads, which I might use if I plug the GZ34 in, just to sort of like store a little bit more energy and maybe make things, the rails, a little bit quieter. We'll see how that turns out. Anyway, this is it. The next video I'll show you will be it when it's all complete, it's finished and it's ready to fire up, and hopefully by then I'll have a pair of speakers out and a source, and we'll see how that goes. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed.